It is my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today from the organization Braver Angels, which you will be learning about. Our main speaker, Ted Getschman, who is Carson City native, yay, local Nevadan, but is coming to us today from London, where he works as an intelligence analyst contractor for the Defense Intelligence Agency. So with that, Ted, I'm going to let you go ahead and start the presentation.
Dr. McCarthy, thank you very much for that. Back in 2018, a man by the name of Sergey would come to work each day to an office in St. Petersburg, Russia. And over the next 11 hours, he would create over 120 comments on posts from Radio Free Europe and Novaya Gazeta. The outlet where he worked was called the Federal News Agency, and the company's name was Mixinfo. And it was linked to Yevgeny Prigozhin, a confidant of Vladimir Putin and the founder of the Russian Internet Research Agency, the IRA. The report of the Select Committee on Intelligence of the U.S. Senate on Russian active measures, campaigns, and interference in the 2016 U.S. election noted that the IRA used social media to conduct an information warfare campaign designed to spread disinformation and societal division in the United States. Sergey's company existed to exploit political cracks in our culture, but neither Sergey nor Prigozhin created those cracks. Let me quickly introduce myself a bit more. My name is Ted Getschman. I was born in Henderson, Nevada, and moved to Carson City when I was 3. I left there when I went to study at the University of Washington on a Navy ROTC scholarship. I then spent 28 years as a naval officer. I served as a naval aviator, and I worked in electronic and acoustic intelligence collection. I also developed and executed military exercises with Japan and wrote the military cooperation plans between the United States and the Caucasus region nations, as well as those with Finland and Sweden. Today, I continue to work with the Department of Defense at Jack Molesworth in the United Kingdom. And I'm so very thankful for having the opportunity to talk with you about why having civil discourse and mitigating effective polarization are national security issues. I also want to thank Dr. Maureen McCarthy for setting up this event for us today. I also need to say that my comments today reflect only my own opinion and are not those of my employer or the Department of Defense or the Defense Intelligence Agency. I became interested in the idea of ending political division, as I had started to see that political division was the greatest limiting factor of a democracy. Not just ours, but democracy in general. So I began to research the core cause of political division and what could be done to end it. While doing that research, I became involved with Braver Angels, which had a very similar and complementary goal, which was that of addressing effective polarization. Today, I want to talk about what effective polarization is and why it matters to national security and how Braver Angels is working to mitigate it. So let me begin with effective polarization. Effective polarization relates to our emotions and attitudes. Over the last few decades, our emotions and attitudes toward our own party has stayed relatively similar and even gotten better. But our views of the other party, according to a 2019 study in the Annual Review of Political Science, have gotten much worse. And we are often filled with animosity, contempt, distrust, you name it, towards those who are of a different political party. It's not just about the issues, but about how we regard our fellow Americans who differ from us politically. They are other, alien to us, strangers, and incomprehensible. They're unlikable and untrustworthy as people. They are morally compromised. And it is these attitudes that have an effect on our national security. There are 3 main ways this demonization of the other political side can affect our national security. First, it makes us more vulnerable to threats from outside the United States. Second, it can create threats from within. And third, it renders us unable to effectively deal with critical issues. Let's begin with threats from without. As a military and a defense professional, I believe there's very little any other nation can do to cause significant harm to the United States without bringing significant harm to themselves. With one exception, getting our society to fight against itself by fomenting discontent, distrust, and division. The modern information age has made this much easier to do, and it is not hard to create a fictitious online presence. Sergey estimated that he worked with more than 100 fake accounts while he was with the Federal News Agency. VPNs can be used to mask one's location, allowing Sergey to appear to be in St. Louis instead of St. Petersburg. Once Sergey established an online persona, he would write blogs and posts about ordinary things, like making cakes or music tracks that he liked. But every now and then, he would put in comments designed to inflame politically sensitive issues. The goal was to weave propaganda seamlessly into what appeared to be the non-political musings of an everyday person. And Sergey played all sides. To quote again from the report, IRA employees were trained to understand and exploit the nuances of politically sensitive issues in America, including taxes, LGBT rights, and the Second Amendment. Once IRA employees better understood the political fault lines and how Americans naturally argued online, their job was to incite them further and try to rock the boat. These information warfare campaigns are continuous and ongoing, but elections are the optimum time for them to have an impact. During elections, and especially elections in the United States, voters have a lot at risk as we fight against each other to see which political faction will get to be represented in the government. Filtering and being critical of what we are told is not something we Americans tend to do well. Research indicates that if we hear something that aligns with what we already believe, then we tend to accept it without much critical thinking. And when we already believe that people holding the opposite political view as us are out to destroy our country, we tend to find corroborating evidence of that in what we hear. But what I want you to take away from this first idea of external threats is that they are in a way superfluous. We were already attacking ourselves before Prigozhin set up the IRA, before Sergey was offered the job. Remember, Sergey and his fellow trolls first had to learn about our political fault lines and how we were already arguing online. And that brings us to the second threat of effective polarization, the internal threat. People have opinions and they want to be heard, especially if they feel those representing them aren't listening. And our society believes they should be heard. We support free speech. And it is even easier for us to put out our opinion than it was for Sergey. We don't need a false persona or a VPN. However, just because they are our authentic opinions doesn't mean they were derived from a logical and detached examination of all the facts. Many of us retweet and repeat what we already believe to be true. And this includes opinions we hold about the other political side and the motives and actions we attribute to them. My point is that even without nefarious actors, we work to tear ourselves apart. When we do not trust the system, when we feel our point of view is being ignored and we are going unheard, we start to consider raising the volume. In the extreme, this could lead to fear and even violence. Without meaning to, we can be our own worst enemy. But I would also argue that this is not yet the worst threat that effective polarization brings to our national security. The third threat comes in the form of robbing us of our ability to deal with the challenges that our nation faces. To begin, since we have such difficulty communicating across the political divide, we can't even agree on what the challenges are that our nation is facing. And if we do agree on what those challenges are, we struggle to agree on the facts surrounding those challenges. And if we do develop initiatives to address those challenges, Individuals adversely affected by those initiatives can often derail them by caging them in terms of our current political division. So, yes, we have adversaries who wish us ill. And yes, we work to tear ourselves apart. But our most serious national security threat is that we face a continuous stream of social, economic, environmental, fiscal, and political issues that we can't address. And in combination, those will batter us until we break. A strong sword and shield cannot keep a sick body from dying. As a society, we appear to generally lack the ability to listen so that we truly understand what other people are saying and so that they feel heard. Further, we generally lack the ability to present our own ideas in a way that isn't overly concrete or hyperbolic. And finally, we tend to avoid going beyond the ideas and attitudes of our own tribe. And these are the problems that Braver Angels directly addresses. What Braver Angels brings to our society is training on not just how to listen, but how to demonstrate to the other person that they are being heard. Braver Angels teaches us to present our own ideas so that people continue to listen and hopefully then allow us to detect areas of pre-existing agreement, not compromise, but common ground. It is by teaching these interpersonal skills of communication, providing opportunities to communicate, and creating a desire to communicate with those on the opposite side, which makes Braver Angels of such importance to our nation. So let me tell you a bit more about Braver Angels. Here's the mission of Braver Angels. Braver Angels brings Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. We have a pledge that includes the phrase, as individuals, we try to understand the other side's point of view, even if we don't agree with it. Admittedly, that's difficult, and so we recognize the need to listen and then try to understand. Another part of our pledge says, in our communities, we engage those we disagree with, looking for common ground and ways to work together. This too is admittedly a challenge, but as an organization, we look to have conversations that may or may not lead to common ground. In all, it comes down to our core values. Respect. We will talk about our fellow citizens on the other side with respect for their intelligence and goodwill. We will avoid characterizing them as deserving of our disdain or pity. Humility. We talk about our own side with the knowledge that our leaders are not perfect and that our current polity solutions are not complete answers to our nation's complex problems. Honesty. We will allow people to feel what they are feeling. We will not ask them to hide their satisfaction or grief regarding current issues. Responsible citizenship. We will emphasize that it's up to all of us, we the people, to depolarize our politics and meet our common challenges. Our work at Braver Angels is to build a house united. And although what I've told you so far might make it seem as if we are an organization of just reds and blues, we welcome people of all political stripes. We have members who are registered as independents, as well as others, which some of you may call purple, a mix of red and blue. Others and independents can take part in almost all of our events, and we welcome their participation in helping to build this house united. Our efforts will take every one of us. How did we begin? This is a picture taken at our very first official workshop. Based on concepts taken from marriage counseling of all places, the organization started just after the 2016 election, bringing reds and blues together to help them better understand the other side in an effort to reduce polarization. Braver Angels was originally founded as Better Angels, based on a line from Lincoln's first inaugural address, appealing to the better angels of our nature. As our mission and membership has changed and grown, so has our name. We now emphasize the need to be brave and show the courage needed to address our country's divide. We now divide our program offerings into three categories. Grow bravely. training and discussion workshops that build mutual understanding and respect for our commonalities and differences. These are conducted online or in-person workshops. Pair up bravely. These are one-on-one conversations bringing people together across differences. And these include red, blue, urban, rural, multi-ethnic, or multi-generational pairs. And experience bravely. A wide variety of experiences that deepen connection and understanding between our members, including debates, book and movie discussions, and BA media content. Our training consists of small or large groups with paired or group skills practice. Skills for Bridging the Divide has the goal of creating constructive, empathetic communication across differences. Depolarizing Within has the goal of understanding our inner polarization and engaging our own side without demonizing the other. And Family and Politics has the goal of navigating family dynamics while addressing tough issues. After these basic workshops, we have opportunities in which people are able to bring the skills in these workshops together for more communication. The red-blue workshops focus on a wide range of topics with the goal of understanding one another. And Common Ground workshops focus on a single issue with a goal of mutual agreement to inspire action. And that can take the form of engaging with local media, like writing an op-ed piece, or reaching out to elected officials to hold a town hall event as a follow-up. We offer many other programs to build relationships and continue the conversations from workshops. In addition to the one-on-one conversations I had mentioned before, Braver Angels debates are a collaborative search for the truth, with everyone invited to speak on difficult issues facing the country. We also have book and movie discussions, red-blue pairs, local alliances, and yes, even songwriting contests. The results? We reduce affective polarization. We're finding that these events help people on both sides of the red-blue divide decrease stereotype thinking about the other side. They lead to seeing others as individuals, not faceless people who for some reason are standing in the way of getting good things done. And here is the impact of our red-blue workshop. You can see where we're addressing that concept of effective polarization. 85% of the people who attend feel less estranged or angry with those across the political divide. 87% gain significant understanding of those on the other side of the political divide. And 91% see lots of areas of commonality. And here is something important. Our goal is not to try to make people change their views on the issues. That rarely happens, especially if there's not already a relationship of trust between the people. But they do consistently change their views of each other, consistent with our goal of reducing effective polarization. It also helps people to let go of their stereotypes. And I think that will allow us to eventually find more collaborative solutions to our country's problems. Because when we truly begin to turn down the rancor, we can become more willing to take a deeper dive to discover there might be valuable information from a different perspective. A good national union, in many ways, looks like a good marriage. There will be disagreements, often heated, but there always remains respect and warmth for those in the other party. At times, both sides will find a way to work together, even if they do not entirely agree. I want to take a minute to discuss a specific initiative that we hope will have far-reaching impact on our country. Braver Angels recently started an initiative called Braver Politics, designed to create an environment in which we use Braver Angels grassroots organizers to provide citizen-led opportunities for officials and their staffs across the country at the local, state, and federal level to find the skills and make commitments to work together productively across the partisan divide. The end goal is an America where citizens trust elected officials, voters in both parties trust elections, and our political institutions reflect the spirit of citizenship and common purpose. The photo represents Representative Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, and Representative Dusty Johnson, a South Dakota Republican, two of our most prominent supporters. Our external threats are not going away. As we move into the next election, the information war will again heat up. Until Americans learn to listen deeply and feel that they are being heard, we can continue to expect more polarizing comments and divisive actions from our own communities. And those we put in office to represent us will also represent how well we are as a society at working together. Dealing with effective polarization is a daunting task because it must be done individual by individual. But Braver Angels is organized not just to teach people these skills, but to teach them to become teachers of these skills. We work to grow a base of volunteers exponentially with the workshops for those who come to us and training on giving those workshops for those who want to do even more for their country. For me personally, those awkward conversations with distant relatives at Thanksgiving, or those little political barbs thrown at people in the office, or having to listen to many different views by political commentators, no longer create stress in my life. And I owe that to Braver Angels. In my opinion, the more people who can experience depolarized communication and civil discourse, the stronger our national security will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. It's a challenge right now. I think it's very clear from a national security standpoint. And when I put out the announcement, I put out a link to the article that Ted wrote about how the divisiveness within inside of our country is really a national security issue right now. There's things that you can do from the top down, but there's things that we can do from the bottom up. I'm active in the League of Women Voters, and the League partnered with Braver Angels to facilitate several workshops in various communities across the country. It's incumbent on all of us to try our best to reach out across that divide and start building civil conversations. And I think one of the most important points that Ted just made is don't expect to change people's minds, but please change your opinion of them. They're really good people, regardless of what political persuasion they have. And I think that's the spirit with which we are going into the Youth Security Forum this year, to be able to give some of these skills to 300 students who hopefully will take them out into their college life and the future. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Marshall Mason, who's been sitting here patiently. Marshall is local. We are very lucky that the Braver Angels state coordinator is a Reno resident. So Marshall will just say a few words and then we'll take questions.
Good morning. It's good to be here today. Marshall Mason. I am the Nevada State Coordinator for Braver Angels. We're still growing our presence here in Nevada. We haven't had any workshops yet. We're still working on that. There's some folks in Las Vegas who are currently organizing a red-blue workshop for law students. We're open to ideas and volunteers for growing our presence in the state. We think this is a really important mission for the safety and the well-being of our country. Thank you.
Thanks, Marshall. Ted, this question's for you. How does Braver Angels deal with militias and ultra extreme groups that are active in the country?
I'm going to take that question to be, if we had individuals who were like in militias or who were ultra extreme in their views, as they come to our workshops and as they come to our groups, we would treat them like everybody else. Our goal is to teach the skills of how you can listen more deeply and how you can provide your own opinion in a way that people won't lock you out. That might still happen. We also teach how to exit gracefully from those kind of situations. Everybody takes a different path through life, and they come from their own existence of what they've seen, what they've done. So we have to take them where they are. And our goal isn't to change their minds. We're not trying to tell anybody you're not thinking the right way or the wrong way. What we want them to do is understand that their fellow citizens who may have different political views are not out to destroy anything or are not out to ruin the country. They just have different political views. They're not evil or strange. I hope that answers that one.
What action should the U.S. government be taking to counter those threats that you mentioned at the very beginning? So that disinformation, the trolls, the folks that are out there taking advantage, finding that crack and pushing us further apart. What works to counter that? And how do we get that kind of a message out in a way that people can hear it and believe it?
Well, probably as most of the people there in the audience know, especially if they've got a military or security background, it's a standard chess game. I mean, we come up with ways of countering this propaganda, of tracking down where the troll cells are, of publicizing these kind of things, and then they adapt, and then we adapt, and then they adapt, and it's just back and forth. This has been going on since the time of the Egyptians and the Romans and the Greeks of spreading rumors and lies about your enemy. So it's never going to go away. Some examples of cultures and countries who really have a different approach would be like Finland. From my work with Finland, I was a country desk officer and I worked with them. They have more of a reputation of being more skeptical about what they're being told, whether it agrees with their current opinion or not. They think a bit more deeply about the issues before they just go on to it. And when it comes to dealing with effective polarization, these really are perception issues. These are viewpoints and understandings. And there's a lot of organizations, such as in Stanford in California at the different universities, who put on contests. What are different ways that we could possibly address this? And one of the biggest ways that seems to have an impact is having a list of statements for people to see what they think. If I were to ask you how many Republicans believe that this is true, or how many Democrats do you believe that this is true? And you say, oh, I think all of them believe that. And then it turns out that only 3 or 4 do. You're like, whoa, what a surprise. And that's what you get in these red blue workshops. You have people coming together and they're saying, wait a minute, you also think that it's important for things to work this way? And you go, well, yes, I do. It's like, I do too. And that's amazing. So it's being in these positions and having these opportunities to communicate together, but it's also the desire to do that. I think a lot of times people sit in their own little bubble and they're very happy. It's fun to hate the other person. It's fun to just not like them. As far as working against foreign threats, we're doing that all the time. We work to expose them. We work to provide the proper information and facts. Very few people in the Western part of the world who believes that Ukraine was doing something that caused the Russian invasion of them. But that's the message that Russia puts out inside of Russia. And that's all they hear. So that's what they believe. When it comes into just jumping onto bandwagons, people are going to do what they're going to do, but we say, do you know where this information is coming from? Are you sure you want to support this particular Facebook page or whatever? But that's just very hard to do. So I don't think there's a good answer that we have at a federal level. It's a grassroots level. It's a personal level when it comes to effective polarization.
Quick question for you, Marshall. Is there a Braver Angels group in Las Vegas?
Well, what we call groups, we call them alliances. They don't have an alliance yet in Las Vegas. We only have one alliance in the state of Nevada, which is just called the Nevada State Alliance. Ted is the co-chair of that. What we do have is people who are interested in starting one, and they're going to start that process by organizing a red blue workshop in Las Vegas.
Excellent. Thank you. What are the research-based communications tools that Braver Angels or others are using to bring people together? First of all, how do you identify them? And then when you bring them together, what are the tools that you use in order to facilitate this? Now, some of these tools are things that we intend to be using with the students in May. So we're very interested in that.
A lot of the tools really come from the realm of marriage counseling, which Dr. Bill Daugherty and some of the other founders of Braver Angels had that kind of a background. And they were wondering, could we use these psychology tools, these counseling tools to try and bring together people who were really hateful towards each other because of their different political views, the same way that two people in a marriage might have become hateful towards each other. We teach a series of skills in these workshops. With the listening skills, there's just kind of different ways that you show that you're listening and you allow the other person to engage. One of the most interesting things that came to me from my work in Braver Angels was that we do role play. If I'm working with somebody who is more liberal leaning, I will take on the role of being conservative. If they're more conservative leaning, I take on the role of being a liberal. So you have this character that you're given, and you have to act in the role of that character. When somebody is listening to you, when you can tell, because they're saying, you're saying this, aren't you? You're really telling me this. It is hard to maintain aggression towards them. And so I think that's kind of one of those big skills that we give. Here's some different ways to phrase things. Here's some different things. Listening is a big one. Acknowledging somebody else's opinion, recognizing that if I understand you, that doesn't mean I agree with you. But I don't have to like get onto my little flagpole and say, I'm going to shut down everything you're saying because that's not what I believe. It's like, no, understand them. And then there's a way to pivot to present your view to make sure they're interested in hearing, that they want to be part of the conversation, and there's specific skills to how you present yourself. Using I statements, saying this is what I'm concerned about in the future. This is what I've read, not, well, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, and being so definitive. So those are some of the skills, but dealing with families gets a little bit more different. Dealing with people who believe the same things you do politically, how you keep from demonizing the other side, a little bit different. That's why we have all these different skills workshops.
Excellent. And following on that question, there's a specific question about identifying areas of common ground. Is that something that Braver Angels works for? In those workshops, do you really look to find areas for common ground for these discussions?
Let's say I believe all of these things over here on the right, and Maureen, you believe all of these things here on the left. But there's some things that we both believe. We already believe. I'm not changing your mind. You believe it, I believe it. It's identifying and finding those things. Those become the common ground. So when we do a common ground workshop, we'll say, this is the problem we're facing. The economy, immigration, abortion, guns, whatever. What is the problem and what do we think we can do about it? What does the more conservative people think? What do the more liberal people think? And then coming together, it's like, oh, wait, we had 3 ideas that we had both already identified. So we're not trying to convince anybody to change their mind. But what we're doing is we're identifying things that, hey, we're already on the same page when it comes to this. Can we put that forward as a possible solution to make things a little bit better? So that's kind of how those common ground workshops happen.
Could NSF host a common ground workshop? Would there be interest in that? Excellent. I see enough interest to say we would love to. That would be excellent. We have a diverse community here in Northern Nevada and across the board, as long as we can do it and hopefully bring in our folks on Zoom. Yes, we would do that. Thank you. What a great suggestion. We will follow up with that. Is it possible to require all members of Congress to take the workshop? I certainly hope so. On that note, maybe we could just invite our own members of Congress to join us here for the workshop.
That is amusing, but actually in all seriousness, that is kind of the idea behind Braver Politics Initiative, not necessarily to get every single one of them to attend it. But yeah, we are not just putting on workshops for Bob and Joe. We're trying to bring this into the institutions.
And I think this is excellent. I know there's a lot of work. I split my time between here and Northwest Montana, and Montana is also struggling with many of these similar issues. And I know there's been a lot of work up there. The league is hosting similar workshops in the communities with the legislators joining so that the community members and the legislators' staff can learn to talk more civilly to each other. So Ted, do you have any parting words for us?
One quick thing. I love the idea of the Common Ground workshop and even doing more Braver Politics. We need people to come forward and we will show you how to do everything. We will teach you how to run workshops. We'll teach you how to organize them. But we do need some kind of support to help us have organizers to set up a Common Ground workshop. Amazing people you get to work with as part of Braver Angels. I love working as a Zem on the different teams. You don't have to know what that is, but I've done a lot of workshops and they're just a great group of people to be with because they all want things to be better. They're all very good at listening. But thank you so much for today, too. And thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. We'll follow up with an email and provide you with contacts for them. I will work with our Braver Angels partners here. We're very lucky to have Marshall as a Reno resident, and I really appreciate everybody being here, being interested in participating in the next round. So with that, I wish everybody well. The sun is out. May spring finally be around the corner. We'll be in touch about our future programs. Thank you.